Have any of you ever wondered if changing the culture of an organization can actually help out the bottom line of a business? Throughout my presentation today, I will show you the quantitative effects that changing corporate culture can have on affecting the bottom line of businesses in the 21st century. First of all, just the overall goals of change. Most of you will know that profit maximization is the goal of almost all businesses. Even non-for-profits are going to want to make as much money as possible so that they can invest in the community, invest more in their business and in their employees. Then obviously your Fortune 500 companies and others want to make as much money as possible. Ways to do that are listed here: increasing revenue, decreasing costs, increasing productivity, and also decreasing employee turnover. All of these things are interconnected. If you have less turnover, your employees are going to be more skilled, therefore they'll be more productive. More productivity will tend to yield more revenue. So those are the overall goals that businesses want to accomplish and how they go about doing it. Now, how can culture affect that? Well, change in leadership. You have two theories here that a man named Douglas McGregor, he put forth two of these theories. Theory X, the first one we're going to discuss, he stated that employees innately dislike work. That they want to be prodded by management to do their work and actually accomplish the task at hand, that employees are not self-motivated. That's the underlying assumption of Theory X. However, Theory X is a more traditional approach. Theory Y is a more modern approach where employees are self-motivated. Give employees freedom and they'll achieve their true potential. And McGregor, he encourages the more modern theory. He encourages Theory Y. However, in its complete theoretical context, neither one is exactly practical. Most of you probably know other students or you've worked with people before that they're not intrinsically motivated. They need to be prodded a little bit or have at least some type of structure in place where they can achieve their potential. So I think giving employees freedom is something that's essential, but at the same time have a structure in place to achieve that. So this first underarching theme is that we're talking about this change in leadership. So as a manager, are you going to think more about Theory X, or are you going to try to have a leadership style that is more geared toward Theory Y, the more modern approach? Now this cartoon is a picture more of Theory X. So you got Attila the manager right here that is shooting arrows at his employees to try to make sure they stay on task and that they do their work. So that's a more traditional approach where they're being prodded by management. But remember, having some sort of combination of structure with freedom to complete the task is probably going to be the best approach for management. So managers, another way, when they're going to lead, they have to think, with my personality, what is the best way to lead? You have 6 different styles that are outlined here: visionary, coaching, affiliative, democratic, pace-setting, commanding. You have to try to implement one of these styles and then display it out to all your employees. And at the same time, you have to be a person of integrity. If you want your employees to be trustworthy and honest and to do what you ask them to, then you have to display integrity for your employees. You have to have good people skills to be an effective manager. And you have to have a positive attitude. You want your employees to be happy at work? Well, you might want to be positive and be happy at work yourself too as a manager. So here's an example of a commanding leadership style where an employee is trying to go talk to his manager, but he really doesn't respond in the correct way. So this is definitely not the way to be an effective manager. It's not the correct implementation of the commanding leadership style. So I wouldn't recommend this at all. So we talked about changes in leadership, the managers considering their approach to just leading the organization. You also have to be able to change the culture. You also have to change the structure of the organization. If the structure doesn't facilitate a change in culture, then it's not going to happen. There are some different ways to do this. The traditional approach is just to have it's kind of linear, where each department will finish its task individually and then pass it on to the next department. The more modern approach now is to have, it's called the collective approach, where you can harmonize across lateral departments, where each department will complete their task, but in the context of achieving some common objective or some common goal. Now, a helpful way, this is kind of what I think about it when I think of the linear approach, where you have a task, it goes from management, they complete it, then it goes to finance, then it goes to website developers, human resources, and so on and so forth. Now, the departments could be changed depending on what type of business it is, but this is just, an example of how the linear approach can be implemented. Now, compare that with a lateral approach, where it's a horizontal. And you see, there was no mention of a common objective in the previous slide in the linear approach. All these departments have this common objective. They all know what's going on. They all know what they're trying to achieve. Now, yeah, they're going to work separate from, HR is not going to be in on everything that management does, and the website developers aren't always going to be with finance. But they all know what their goal is, and they're all keenly aware of that. Now, to have the change in leadership, to have your structure, both of those are necessary to actively change the culture. So the last part, you get those two, you have to build the base of the house before you can put up the windows and the curtains. Now you can change the culture. You can actively do that. Foster open communication. You can encourage employees to talk management, good or bad news. A lot of employees are really scared to go to management with bad news, and really that affects that management's ability to respond to problems. If they know about bad things that are going on with a company, that they're reporting losses, then they can try to actively find a way to mitigate that situation, especially if something like fraud or embezzlement or even sexual harassment happens. You want employees to be able to talk to management. If not management, a lot of businesses now have hotlines for employees to call for situations such as sexual harassment, especially where they can call and report that, and then it will be taken care of, so the employee can report that anonymously. Now, communication, although it's good, there are some businesses that kind of take it a little extreme. I was a teacher for 3 years, and sometimes you get a little overloaded with meetings and emails and everything else, and although it can be good, too much of it can prohibit you from completing your task, to be able to perform your job well and to do your work efficiently. So changing culture, also with fostering open communication, you also want to actively try to raise employee morale. Now that's a very cost-effective solution. You don't have to, you could do it not as cost-effective and just give them a raise. That will make everybody a lot happier, but some cost-effective solutions, because that's not always an option. You can recognize people for their accomplishments. Employee of the Month is something that a lot of businesses incorporate, where you really recognize people from doing a good job, or offer them professional development. I'm going into a new career as an accountant, and I really like the opportunity to learn more, because being clueless at work isn't that fun. And the more you learn, the happier you are with your job, because you feel like you're accomplishing something significant. And usually, the better you get at your job, the better chance you have of advancing within the corporation. Zappos is a good example of a business that really raised employee morale on a weekly basis. They have a very unique culture. They would have office parades to celebrate the corporate values of a company. The employees, whenever they got a phone call, Zappos made it their mission to make each customer, to wow each customer, capital W, capital O, capital W, wow all their customers. If you have to spend an hour on the phone with them to make sure they're happy when they leave, that's fine. So they took their culture to another level, and in 2009 they raised their value up to almost $2 billion when they sold to Amazon. So there's a quantitative example of how implementing a culture and raising employee morale can have a positive effect on the bottom line of a company. Another example is some research by Professor James Heskett and John Cotter. They studied 12 firms with performance-enhancing cultures. Those are the firms with the blue bars there. And then you have the 20 firms without performance-enhancing cultures with the red. You see, just quickly glancing over those, it's really no comparison that the firms in the study who actively implemented performance-enhancing cultures did far better, 3, 4, 500% and on upward better than the companies that did not implement performance-enhancing cultures. So I posed the question at the beginning of the presentation on can just a change in culture, can that have a quantitative effect? Well, according to this study, according to looking at the effects of Zappos and other corporations like it, there are many examples. Yes, a change in culture can absolutely have a quantitative effect on the bottom line of a company. Now, I thank you for listening to